I represent webcomics like XKCD or Kate Beaton, Tilly Walden, Strange Planet, Sarah Anderson, which is really fun. And I represent a lot of traditional sci-fi and fantasy. Anne Leckie, Mary Robina Kowal, Becky Chambers, River Solomon, P. Jelly Clark, Shishin Liu, The Three-Body Problem.
This video is going to be an interview between myself and my literary agent, Seth Fishman. But the real important part of this is I want to open a line of communication from Seth to my audience. So this is going to be basically an introduction. We're going to be running down who exactly Seth Fishman is, how he has managed to find success as an agent, as an author involved in the publishing space, and then allow you all to leave comments and questions on this video that in a month or two, when Seth has time to sit down with me again, we can address and answer. And if you guys like this enough, it'll be a continual, ongoing conversation that I hope will provide more direct insights than what a lot of people are able to receive for their writings, for their curiosities. There's tons of great bookish content about publishing here on the platform, but rarely are you able to communicate with someone who is actively on the bleeding edge of the what's hot right now in the fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction space publishing, because that's kind of what Seth is specializing in, handling projects like Sword of Kagan, Dungeon Crawler Carl, and me. But before we get into the video, I would just like to thank today's sponsor, very appropriately, Campfire. In my personal opinion, the best writing tool on the market, and the longest sponsor we've consistently had here on the channel. They can help take that behemoth marathon task of writing a book, and without adding any unnecessary tools, if you get what I'm saying, ease the process a bit by also allowing you to, as you work, create features for future readers to unlock. Yes, just as you would probably love to see George R. R. Martin's notes on Winds of Winter as he writes it, which I'm sure he's doing, Campfire is going to provide you all kinds of guides to have your characters, timeline, and plot organized so you don't lose track of it. And then as your readers read your project, you can unlock those same notes for them. Whether it's maps, timelines, or just, yes, a character sheet, everything becomes naturally and smoothly available to you on Campfire, which you can even upload an existing ongoing project to, and it'll break down into chapters for you. It's truly a win-win that is here to help make the process easier while providing bonus content if you choose to publish on their platform, which they have remarkably high royalties compared to the competition if you do so. And for a limited time, enjoy 40% off a lifetime purchase by using the code BlackFriday24 before it expires on December 3rd. So go ahead and inject your imagination with some steroids, and after today's interview, check out Campfire if it interests you. Now, into the interview. I did a little fishing before this interview because I was like, wait, I haven't actually checked out Seth's like online presence much yet. So I just went into your website and I found the beautiful catalog of children's books that you have out.
That's
and
right.
I love that half of them are labeled fiction and then nonfiction. I found Up Your Nose and ordered it, and I am very interested because it's in the nonfiction category. So I just want to find out what exactly is up my nose, aside from fingers.
Well, you know, I always wanted to write a book with a nose. You can literally look up the nose on the cover. That's a book about germs. That's the fourth nonfiction book I did. I did a sort of a series with the illustrator Isabel Greenberg that were just sort of cool things about the body or the world. And the germs one was was in COVID times, and the publisher wanted it. And I have to say that was the hardest one to write for probably a lot of reasons. There's just so much to cram into a 32-page book, and turns out there's like a lot of germs, more germs than you think about. So that was a little bit tricky. The nonfiction one I'm sort of most proud of is the first one, 100 billion trillion stars, which is about really, 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 really. And then the gag when I'm with kids is I just keep saying really for like forever on one breath. And they love it. Really big numbers. And that one has done well, and it makes me really happy. But yeah. So I did those 4 nonfiction books, and then tried my hand at disruptive picture book fiction.
I love this intro to the interview. Surprise, we're already recording. I hope that's okay. Yeah. You are a man of many hats, and I think you've established that quite well. And you have a very well-rounded view on, I don't even want to just say publishing. I want to just say like being a successful creative in the modern era, because you are an author yourself. You are an agent. You've done so much. And it makes you a fascinating person for me to talk to, because I'm on the complete opposite side, but I also kind of have this shotgun approach, right, where I'm looking at shows, books, movies, everything, but I'm at the full other end. You are at the start a lot of the time, and I'm at the other side. From your perspective, what am I doing wrong?
What are you doing wrong?
What am I doing
Well, I'll tell you
wrong?
what you're doing wrong is that, you said I wear many hats. I don't like hats, and you have a hat on right now, and it's backwards. You have a hat on with like your inside with your headphones on. I don't really understand it.
I can
That's
actually, I have a very good reason. I'm trying to let my
okay.
hair grow out, and I've learned
Okay.
today when I woke up it was a mistake, and I'm hiding it. So that is the actual answer. Seems like you have a nose for success. Or maybe I'm just seeing the many successes, and I'm not necessarily as many failures. What allows your nose to find diamonds in the rough?
The failures are there, like all over the place, and I will go over them in meticulous detail. I think, though, to start with the success side of things, I like to treat my scattershot like shotgun effect is not really that for me. It's that I think I'm a curious, smart guy who likes to take the risk of not knowing something and learning about them, and then being okay to fail in that space, not liking it, but also open to learning the lessons from that space and applying it elsewhere. Say I represent an illustrator. You represent an illustrator for taking their online popular webcomic and turning it into a collection like Nathan Pyle's Strange Planet, which is a client of mine. But then we do a kids picture book, and we have a TV show, and we have a Kickstarter, and we have but I have to know how to do those things. And so I dive into those spaces. And once I know how to do that, I can apply it to other authors if they want that. And I don't it's not about money. It's about, hey, what do you want to do? But going back to the failure, let's talk about this. I've wanted to be a writer my whole life. I went to a good school for it. I went to a good grad school for it. I've written lots of books. They're in drawers. I managed to get an agent for an adult novel. It did not sell. I sold a YA duology on Partial to Penguin, which is great, right? But it wasn't for tons of money, and those books are literally out of print right now. And then those picture books, I have 7 of them. That first one, 100 Billion Trillion Stars, has done really well, makes me a lot of royalties, won awards. And the last one, Brandon and the Totally Troublesome Time Machine, which I love, and I think it's great, but it might as well not exist. And I know what it feels like to walk into a store and to not find your book. A lot of times we talk about authors, what are they writing for? You want to see your book in a store. Well, just get ready. Do you want to see your book not in the store too? For all the connections I have and the knowledge I have in the space, I fail all the time, and it's also not fun or easy. So I just want to be clear. In some ways, it's just, I think it's me being interested in lots of different things, which makes it look like I'm good at lots of different things.
And you touched on something there that I find fascinating. If you don't mind, we have prepared questions. I'm just liking this conversation.
Yep, sure. Yeah.
There's this idea I've had for a while. My theory is that algorithms, because let's say, this book is trending, algorithms on social media and stuff then are desperately trying to find things tangentially related to promote alongside them. And so more than ever, we're seeing success compound success compound success, as there's forces working for an author that's managing to hit a wave that weren't necessarily there before. And I think you can even see some examples of that in people like Sanderson, who have done a really good job of mastering being on social media and being something that's constantly in the search results. Is that something that is getting more and more integrated into the publishing mind, or is that something they're still a bit behind on and don't understand?
I think that's a great question, and I think that behind on and don't understand is probably unfair. A lot of things change and shift pretty quickly, and publishing is there might be real money there, but they're not real spenders like the way that other industries are. It's almost laughable when you think about the budget of a film and TV project. So that's why I think you see publishers sort of jumping on trends, sometimes a little late, sometimes even building, hiring people, to acquire things in a space, on the way out of that space, right? And subscription boxes and premium books and special editions. And these are a different form of the ancillary rights or things that the algorithm might pop up that are related. So a popular book, well, we got a popular books special edition that's right here next to it. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of sort of publishers who are coming in really quickly to sort of a self-published space, which a lot of it is, those are sort of algorithm based. Sanderson is a very good, interesting example because he outputs a lot. Is he the best writer that's out there? I think genuinely most people don't think so. They think that he's a good writer, but I come across very few people that like put him as their number one, and you might see a billion people who say that, so I could totally be wrong, but that's my take on it. And but he's great. He's a great author to his fans, and he pushes hard into this space, and he's captured on a moment, and there's a lot going on with that. So I feel like my take on this personally is to learn the things that can apply across a larger wave,
Mm-hmm.
and sure, hop into that space if it's something you love, but see what you can build from there and apply elsewhere. And I think that that's what publishers aren't necessarily the best and most nimble at, if that makes sense. But I think that not trad pub, self-pub creators are very good at doing stuff like that, being more nimble. So that's a bit of a loose answer there. Yeah.
No, I think you're really providing a good nuanced perspective, because it feels to me like they are running faster and faster on a treadmill, but the treadmill keeps increasing in speed. Like, I think that the fact that Dungeon Crawler Carl's been moved on so quickly was really smart, and it seems like they're hitting that while it's blowing up in the wave, and like, okay, great, they've managed to actually like capture something. I feel I say something wrong there, or no?
Well, I think that's interesting. So, I tried to sell the print rights for Dungeon Crawler Carl for like 2 years
Really?
before I got that deal. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was like a very recent thing that some traditional publishers,
Mm-hmm.
some big five publishers, are willing to buy print only rights, but only on backlist titles, and oftentimes only on backlist titles with a new title, like a new title also attached to it.
Sorry for the audience. Could you describe what a backlist title is for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll actually say that backlist has like some variant definitions, but the short of it is something that's already been published. There's a lot to say about this. It's actually very interesting because a successful company, a publishing company or agency, needs to have something like 20 to 40% of their income by backlist royalties. So backlist really does matter, but we define it a little bit differently all the way. The short of it is I did have some interesting variant offers for that, but I just was banging my head against the wall, being like, Dinneman, the books are amazing and the audio and ebook rights are selling like crazy, but the print rights are just sitting around. Even with the success of Dungeon Crawler Carl, if I were to go back and try and sell it, there are 3 of the big 5 publishers would maybe be open to it, and 2 of them would not be. Like, still not be okay with print only deals, and it's because of precedence and because of, mainly like precedence in their company. So it's an interesting tough thing. It's a tough thing, but I had to give Ace credit. When they got on board like as soon as they were able to do it. Jessica Wade's the editor. She's amazing. And when she got on board, they went rolling fast, 1, 2, 3 books out in a row, pushed hard, treated it really well, paid real money, and the books are selling really, really well. It's a success.
Yeah.
And that is going to be good for building this out more. But for me, it's like I'm on the forefront, not me at the forefront. We're at the front lines trying to like break this open, and allow this opportunity,
When you say that 2 of them would still pass on it because of precedent, is that a genre issue? Is that just they're not interested in stuff that's, indie success? What could, it seems like just free money. Like, why would they say no?
They do not want to set a precedent of buying any books that do not include audio or ebook rights.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense.
Agents have really let down authors over time, because the weakest agents, and there's plenty of them. I'm not like I don't even know who I'm talking about. It's just like the weakest agent, it like still speaks a little bit for all agencies. As soon as we gave a 25% ebook royalty, that was bad. As soon as we let publishers start buying audio rights, that was bad. And there's so much interesting audio stuff. We could, but there's so much interesting audio stuff out there. But these precedents that exist are really problematic, especially because the publishers don't treat the audiobooks. They think that, they can do okay by them, right? But then they think they're doing a great job by them, but they're just missing so many things about audiobooks, which I think is real problematic and and frustrating.
We've kind of established this, but I would love for you to introduce yourself to my audience in terms of who are you, what do you do, and what are you excited about to talk today in terms of being an agent with the audience?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Seth Fishman here. I'm a literary agent. I'm a vice president at a company called the Gernert Company. We are a mid-size agency that I think punches well above our weight. We represent people like John Grisham and Louise Penny and the 1619 Project and Chad Harbuck and like a whole range of wonderful creators. I run our LA office. And am a bit of a strange agent in that I represent a lot of, as we were sort of alluding to, a lot of different things. I think a lot of agents sort of only do, say, sci-fi and fantasy, or only do like New Yorker essayists and literary fiction. I represent web comics like XKCD or Kate Beaton, Tilly Walden, Strange Planet, Sarah Anderson, which is really fun. And I represent a lot of traditional sci-fi and fantasy. Anne Leckie, Mary Robina Kowal, Becky Chambers, River Solomon, P. Jelly Clark, Shishin Liu, The Three-Body Problem. But I also have recently, and this is where to answer that other question, I recently dived into the self-published space because I just love what everyone's doing there. I love the business acumen. I love the creativity. I love the different ways of monetizing coupled with the different ways of reaching your fans. Like there's just so much to learn there that I think we're really failing on in the trad pub space. So I represent, Matt Dinneman, Emma Wong, Will White, Shirtaloon, Haylock Jobson, and a number of others in the space, which is really fun and interesting. So that's me. I also write books and have always wanted to write. So yeah.
On the whole stream, I have your books underneath you right now, so you can't see this, but
Hey.
I'm giving you the plug for sure.
Well, you should read them. They're good, fun books for kids, right? But that's the fun thing. That's the hard thing. It's like hard to plug yourself when you like. My brain is really mainly on my clients. That's still where I'm set up.
And there's a whole bunch of people in the comments section right now after you just did all those names who are going to go, wow, this guy is responsible for half of my favorite authors that I've discovered in the last few years. You have a really impressive sense, it seems, for what is popping right now in fantasy. And I love hearing the fact that you've been working with Will White.
Yeah, that's new. There's a lot of new creators in this space or not new. They're not new creators. I'm newly connected with in this space. My job for a lot of these creators are to work on ancillary rights like translation rights or to help with merch rights, or to help with traditional publishing rights if they ever want to hop into that space, or what that might look like, to be part of a larger team. And for me, it's a lot of work hopping into one of these creators who have 55 titles or even 8 titles, because I want to read them, and so I'm constantly listening and reading and catching up and getting there and like looking at spreadsheets and educating my team and learning more things. But that's been my passion of late, is really diving into that space.
It's amazing because I've sent you some drafts of my early works and my last book and stuff, and the turnaround you did was, you might be one of the few people I know who reads faster than myself. I gotta believe you are just a lover of reading, because there's no other way. I know for a fact that you could keep that going.
Well, dear listener, I omitted, but I think it might be obvious, I represent Daniel as well. When I'm able to pick something up to read, I can read pretty quickly. And I think one of my greater weaknesses as an agent, though, is that I have a diminishing mark of returns for edits.
That was a really interesting lesson for me to learn, because in my previous efforts where I've had people put in their spoons in my projects to give advice, I've kind of let them have free reign. I really think that's the correct method to approach, because I think one of the big challenges as an author, and you can speak to this for both angles, is you are too close to see your story objectively. And I'm too close to Wheel of Time to see it objectively now, because I've read it 10 times all the way through. And so I think it's actually a really good strategy to kind of put in a little bit of a barrier and say, I need to stay distant from this to an extent so that I can keep coming and looking at it with fresh eyes.
I mean, I think that's important. I think that as a writer who has beta readers, there's an inclination to use them almost as a crutch sometimes, or you need a break. I'm just going to let someone else read this or whatnot. And you sometimes need to deal with your own stuff that you need to deal with.
Yeah.
But other times it's just a recognition, if someone gives you a rough draft of something, and you can give lots of notes, but A, it takes a lot of work, and B, your brain goes in these different directions you have to work on and whatnot. But as soon as you read the second version of that, it is by nature less exciting in terms of discovery, to see a huge change is exciting. When it comes to actually helping in a particular way, I want to be able to keep that enthusiasm around it. I think the things that were the hardest lessons was, I said I take on a lot of things, is that there are limits to my interests, and that leads to suffering. Suffering might be the wrong word, like me not being as good an agent as I could be for someone. So like I represented Dominique Ansel, the creator of the Cronut, if you've had one, they're delicious. But I'm not a cookbook, like I'm a creative guy. I think that's why I got him, and we sold 2 books and they went well, but I'm not really the right agent for him. And when we parted, it was clear. And it was a lesson for me that there are still limitations. You can't just take on anyone. You still need to like love and get yourself all the way into a space. That was a good lesson to learn and to know.
That's really interesting to hear, because I actually had a next question about misconceptions about getting an agent. And if you don't mind, I actually would kind of like to take the reins on that, because my biggest misconception going in was it's much more of a long-term commitment relationship than I think people realize. Like, it's not about just one book deal. It's about, all right, we're going to strategize. We're going to come back to this. We need to rework on this. Like, it's in many ways, like if the comparison that it's felt like to me in some ways is like, if you're an athlete, it's like getting a trainer. It's like getting a coach. It's like, this is the person who's going to now like really be there to try and guide a career in a way where it's like a lot more intense than I think some people who just think, oh, this person helps me sell my book, like, and that's the end of it.
I think your agent is your most important decision throughout your process. If you're there and you end up getting one, your editor probably will leave and go to another publishing house in the midst of your process, because that's how they get raises or promotions, or there's downsizing and all these things. But agents sort of stick around. I think about it more like a relationship, like a significant other. There's a lot of emotion around it. There's a lot of connectivity, but you also have to remember, and this is like that sort of pep talky kind of thing, is that you are your own business. So you're hiring an agent. And I know that's a bit unfair to say, because I recognize the power structure at first is agent has the power and the writer doesn't, until the writer gets big enough, and then it does flip pretty quickly. And we are there throughout every sort of step of the way, in terms of every decision, if you want.
I've spoken about this process a bit with my audience, just here and there in channels, videos, but I've told them, like, hey, you need to research agents. You need to try to find agents that you think will be a general good fit based off like their catalog versus what you're trying to pitch. But a lot of the times when I give this advice, the response I get was, well, I've kind of given up on trying to get an agent, because you need to have success as an indie author, or you need to have success like on a platform of some kind before you'll ever get the attention of an agent. And I don't believe that's true, but I would love to hear from you about what the current landscape looks like for people who have no experience, but have a book that they want to get, an agent's attention with.
It's a tricky question too, because I think we can't pretend that it's easy to get, it's not easy to get an agent.
Never has been.
It hasn't been for a number of reasons. Sometimes you're not good enough as a writer and you don't know it, or you know it, and those are realities, right? And also, writing is like exercising. We all know this. You can get better over time, and you will get better over time. And maybe that's a drawer book. I think it's also important to recognize that the people who read books at agencies are sometimes not the agent. It's an assistant, it's an intern, it's, anyone could be having a bad date. There are all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with you, why it's hard to get an agent. This idea that you need to have a platform is sort of a newish thing in fiction. In nonfiction, it's the case. It is true. It's really hard to sell a book on cynicism if you're the creator, if the writer is not like a TED Talk person or a professor of psychology at Stanford. Mm-hmm. Jamil Zaki, a book of mine that just published recently. But those things are I was just having fun throwing pitches.
Plug it, man. Plug it. That's totally fine by me.
That's true in nonfiction. For fiction, and listen, Daniel, you have a platform, right? And that does make it easier, sure. But it is in no way necessary. I would say no, like I have no interest or time, frankly, to represent things that aren't good. Mm-hmm. So for me, it still always goes down to like what is good. and what has potential in a particular way. And I learned, you talked about lessons. I've also learned that when you just try to take something on because you think you could sell it, you're miserable. Like you're attached to a person who maybe you don't like. You are attached to a project that maybe you don't really care about. How do you actually succeed as an agent is that you have like the book is an extension of yourself. Like it's your reputation on the line. It's your time on the line. It's your care on the line. It's your creativity on the line. So you could just sell something. I'm sure there are some agents like that. Having a platform will help you. But what is really cool about debuts who come from nowhere is that there's no track. There's no baggage.
Mm-hmm.
When I send it to a publisher, I call up an editor and I say, I just read the best thing I've read in blank, whatever I'm saying, it doesn't matter, but they're excited to break that out. That debut breakout is as valuable as a platform. It is actually, I want you to hear that. Being a debut author with no background is valuable. If you are an author with a platform who has sold 5,000 copies of a book that you self-pubbed, that is less valuable than an unknown author with no copies. If you have self-pubbed 75,000 copies, that is different. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense, but you're already succeeding in a different place, right? But I want you to recognize there's a value to the unknown quantity, because a publisher can build up a story around it and can just focus on the book. And so it really does come down to the actual book. And I think that's the thing that most people, I've been talking about, finding an agent. I've been talking about, publishing, and everyone wants the bookstore. They just want to read good books. Like we just, that's why we're here. So, people need to keep remembering that there's an echo chamber. I was part of it when I was in the MFA programs myself. We would be like, oh, if I got an offer for $100,000 from a publisher, I would say, hey, you know what? You keep 25,000 of that and put it into marketing. And I'm using a voice like as if I'm making fun of other people. I'm making fun of myself because that's just not what happens. Nor maybe should it happen. You take that 25 if you really mean that, and then do something with that on your own. And mind you, also, I want to recognize people don't have the luxury of that. That's the truth of the matter too. So it comes back to that. And I think it's really important to hear that. I recognize it's hard. It's hard to, I'm going to answer another question. The follow up to this is basically, how do you find those agents? Like, how do you get through the noise? You do want to do your research. You do want to know who you're submitting to. Look in the back of your favorite author's books, and look in the acknowledgments. Look at books you think are doing well, or like the books that you're writing, and find out who the agents are and approach that agent that way. Or you do be part of communities. There is value there in terms of connectivity to things. Mm-hmm. But we're all looking for people. I'm closed to queries now. When I take on more people, it's taking away from my time with my other clients. But what that really means is I am open to queries for the things that like blow my mind, to the extreme. And I love that. I love that as like a base for me. So I still get things from people, and that's still fine. But yeah, that's a long-winded response. I also want to say, if you type in my name, Seth Fishman, and onto YouTube and like type in query letter, there's like an hour-long thing I did for World Builders, the Patrick Rothfuss fundraising thing. That's sort of how to write a query letter. So we don't need to go all the way into that. You can just go look at that. That's my advice on how to do that.
I'm really glad you say that, because I was debating here whether or not I should get into like the minutia of, but yeah, just plug that. Hey, if you want to see, how Seth Fishman wants the query letter done, there you go. That does allow me to ask a different question that I think is something that a lot of authors who maybe have a nearly completed or a completed manuscript aren't sure what to do next. Does it affect you at all if someone has self-published a book, and let's say it hasn't been very successful, it's got maybe a couple reviews? Does that kind of turn you off, or is it just a null factor and it's fine that they've put it out on, whatever publishing site, but you may have them take it down? Like, should someone try and shoot for that indie lottery success, or should they keep what they have close to the chest, query around, and then strategize depending on the results of those queries?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I would say this is one of the rare, like, bright rays of sunshine in publishing, in that if you self-publish a book and it doesn't work, it's usually not a negative against you, because it can also easily be sort of explained away as in like, you're a self-published author in a big crowded world. You don't know what you're doing, blah, 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 and that is like, but if you sell over a certain number, then it becomes part of your positive story. So that's not me saying, hey, everyone go self-publish a book and see and do that 6 months before you query. But it's usually not a negative against you. I think one of the trickiest things is if you sell your rights. I want to be really clear. I think there's one thing that happens a lot right now in this self-published world is that people are selling audio rights really quickly. People are selling all their rights really quickly. If you sell audio rights to Podium, don't grant them anything else. And mind you, I like Podium. It's not just Podium. There's lots of other places. It doesn't mean that you don't grant them the rights. You just have to have a plan. You have to have a real reality around it. And maybe you sell, maybe don't sell translation rights. Maybe there's a lot of these. That's why you need an agent. As soon as someone's offering to buy your stuff, pony up or connect with an entertainment lawyer. They take 5% of your, you don't need an agent at the moment. I mean, maybe you do, but that's 15%. An entertainment lawyer is 5% or they're hourly. Pay that. Even if there's no advance to it or whatever, you have to have a lawyer look over your stuff and make it, don't be your cousin Fred who's in real estate. It has to be an entertainment lawyer who understands what's going on. And it's really, this I can't stress enough. In fact, this is the thing that's most important for self-publishing people is right now in the self-publishing space, people are grabbing rights. And they are grabbing rights early for very specific reasons. And it is not necessarily predatory, but it is in that other company's best interest when that other company might not be the expert at all those different rights.
Yeah.
And you do not want to sell your rights to a place that doesn't necessarily, isn't necessarily an expert in those set of rights. I know how hard it is to say no to opportunities when you don't have any other opportunities.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you have an agent who says, yeah, let's take you on. And there's red flags around that agent, or you even are submitting elsewhere and they're like, we need you to tell me in 24 hours. Any agent that gives you a time limit means they're not working for your best interest. They're already not servicing you. Gotcha. They are already not servicing you. They are servicing themselves. And that's not how you want to step into a relationship. An agent should be able to stand on their own merits and give you the time. I would love for you to come with me in 24 hours, but I would never, ever, lock that down. Same thing with the publisher. If the publisher wants all the rights, just say no. And if they say, we're not going to do a deal like that, an agent can get that deal. That doesn't mean you need an agent. That means you can do that because that's the same sort of setup in reality. An entertainment lawyer might be able to help you do that too. You got to really start using the business brain, which is unfair to say, but really, really, really early on along those lines. I went on a tangent, but gosh, that's a really important thing I want to share.
No, I think you're entirely right. And I've seen examples of that. I've spoken to authors who said, they sold something that they regret. And I even had a sit down with Sanderson where he went into the details of how getting back his special edition rights has turned into one of the most lucrative things he's ever done, because he's then been able to go on and do incredible things with his special editions, where the publisher who originally had them was basically saying like, oh, no one's buying special editions anymore. That turned out not to be true. It's hard though, right? Because we're in a day and age of instant gratification, but publishing is always been and always will be a game of patience, it seems. I mean, whether it's the stories of people who resubmit a book again and again after tweaking and finally get success, or it's the, holding off on rights. But there's not
less patience. It's more about betting on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to recognize you've got to put a book in a drawer, like sometimes too. Like I think that's a tricky thing as well. Like sometimes that writing is not good enough and it's better to come back to it. You're doing something else, but that is still betting on yourself. That's betting on the idea that you have more ideas, that your writing will grow, that you don't have to be stuck in this thing as your masterpiece, because it's not going to be your masterpiece most of the time. And it's okay because your next book will be. So let's move in that direction and come back to it. That's okay. But you still got to bet on yourself in those scenarios. Actually, I feel bad calling out Podium because, again, I think Podiums have made a lot of really great books work.
I'm glad you brought that up specifically, because in my own personal experience with Podium, I don't think they'll mind me saying this at all. We had a little bit of a hitch in our negotiation because I did not want to go exclusive to Amazon, and their response for Neon Ghost was, oh, but we're going to, or this deal's not going to work, because they're just like, Amazon is the audiobook place. It's where you have to, and the rate difference if you don't go exclusive there makes it something where they're not interested. And it seems like there is this, not stranglehold, that's the wrong way to put it, but there is this unreasonable incentive in terms of, like, especially for indie authors, to just not turn down being exclusive to the Kindle space, because they own so much of it. They're such a big player in that space. And it's a huge part of the conversation that my audience seems to be interested in having in terms of their own publishing journeys. A lot of the indie authors I talk to are conflicted. They don't feel great about it, but they also know like you're less likely to get picked up in algorithms, you're less likely to get promoted unless you go exclusively to Amazon. And I know as an agent, this isn't necessarily the place where you make the most decisions, but I would still think, especially because you are an author, you are someone who understands this hustle from all sides. What is your perspective on the current playing field in terms of the draw of KDP and all of these other factors?
When TradPub was still like undisputably king, agents, authors would try to do less business with Amazon on principle. They're predatory. Mm-hmm. And I think that when it comes to, say, like a traditional published deal, like, because you can send it to Amazon Publishing, like a book to, you send it to Penguin Random House, you could send it to Amazon Publishing, which is different than what you're talking about. I just want to be clear. Mm-hmm. But we actively don't really do that too much. I have a couple authors in that space, but a lot of them don't want that in their first, second, or even third round of submissions. But I have slowly started to just look at things in a bit of a longevity, like we're talking about here, like a long-term thing, and recognize what's on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't think that there aren't other ways to do things, but what I think is that you just don't have to think of anything as the only way in your career you would do something. Mm-hmm. Just like you don't have to only be TradPub. I think hybrid is the answer. I think that you do one or the other. So if the current marketplace bears that you will get more success using the Amazon Audible model, mm-hmm. that is okay. And you don't need to feel any guilt around that. I think that once you succeed, if you use them to succeed, then you make a decision as to what you want to do afterwards. And you use the power that you've accumulated. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I like to think about. There are other options that exist. Absolutely. Spotify is becoming a thing. I don't love it. Not that I don't love a competitor. I just don't love the terms that are playing into that. There's also great readers. Like, you think about Jeff Hayes, Sound Booth Theater is like a great, platform, singular platform thing, which I think is a wonderful thing to do. And if you output enough, you should be experimenting across different games. It's not like a deal with the devil. It's not that kind of thing. It's like, think about Sanderson, as you were talking about Sanderson. Sanderson has used his clout to literally create new avenues of industry. Mm-hmm. The special editions is a great example. He's making it probably much harder for other authors to be able to keep their special editions. It's nigh impossible now. You can carve out some things.
The burden of trying to make change happen on this landscape is not on your shoulders because there's nothing you could do that would make any kind of change. And I've had some people push back in ways that I can't disagree with. Like, Amazon has helped so many authors find success, and I got to give them credit for that. That in some ways is fantastic. I mean, they have made an ecosystem where people who would have never been able to make a living in writing before now can. I just don't like the way that they strangle competition. I mean, it's antithetical to what I think in the long run will be good for the space.
I don't disagree. Authors have the ability to affect the outcome in ways that are more than they used to be. And I know you might be saying like, what? This is not great. This is not like a great thing to be saying. I'm not like trying to rosy the picture, but when an author previously wanted to affect an outcome, what would they do? They would get in the car, put copies of their book, and like try and go to store. And you can still kind of do that, but that doesn't really work now. If you really want to, you can mess around with a lot of different things. You can know your own way around marketing and advertising. You can, and I'm trying to avoid just platform-based things. I want to be clear. It's not just like you can start a TikTok channel. I actually think that's like, that can work, but that a lot of times that's some time and effort that does not work. But I think that there is a community.
I want to reiterate, don't just casually start a YouTube channel thinking it'll pop off. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with Seth. That is a massive commitment that will take away from your writing time.
Totally. But I mean, I think that my biggest frustration with traditional publishing is I feel like when we sell a book, we're like shooting a bullet and then the bullet's out and then we can only like blow on it a little bit and it doesn't really move too much. That's like scary and that's hard. And I'm tired of that. So I like the stuff that exists in the non-trad space because I feel like that allows you to have community and grow in a different way. But I'm not going to beat around the bush. I mean, I think it's hard out there. And I don't have those answers. Like, these are not the answers I know, because I think the most depressing thing in TradPub for me is that what works on one book doesn't work on another book. But that mixture is some of the sparks around it, but some of the difficulties. So I know this is a roundabout. I'm like trying to find the rays of light. It's not like all doom and gloom. Like, if you give me something that's good, we'll sell it. But I don't know if it's going to work. And I wish I knew if things work. But I don't know. And that's the thing that really kills me.
You're just being a realist about it, which I think, everyone's going to agree. It's never been easier to put a book out, but the competition has never been higher as a result. And so, you're just being a realist, that it's an uphill fight. It is both uphill and downhill. It is, you can do it easily, but then the success is competition. I would just like to kind of have a final question here of, in terms of Dungeon Crawler Carl and, let's say, Sword of Kagan, 2 books that you took on, what about those specifically, those examples stuck out to you? And maybe people can extrapolate from there what in their work, and they can kind of highlight to make something stand out to an agent for.
That's a great question. I think that some of the lessons to learn from there are actually about some of the, almost not even about the books themselves, which is kind of interesting. Like, it's about the trends that exist. Mm-hmm. Like, discoverability of books is just different than it used to be. Back in the day, where there was self-publishing, but you could really only find new things by looking at what was on the Amazon charts. And I would read like the number 1 self-published book, and I thought it was Tosh, and like I was like, after too many bad books, I just like didn't care. And I was like, okay, so clearly there's good books out there, but I don't know how to find them. Yep. Now with creators like with people like you and other book talkers, like, so sort of I mean, ML Wong, I discovered her because of reviews, like just reviews that popped up into my thread, and sort of real enthusiasm about him, and then read and was like, oh my gosh, and then connected. And I think it's very fascinating, because Blood Over Brighthaven was self-pubbed for like 2 weeks, and we weren't even gonna be sending that out. We weren't going to be sending that out. We were going to be working on another project. But then editors sort of initiated interest to the level that we're like, all right, well, should we? And then there was actually a value proposition. We were like, we need to have it to be a certain level in order for us to take this down. Because normally you want your mind to be wrapped around what you're doing. And then we hit that level happily, but that that's an interesting, different kind of way about it. I think everyone rightly loves Sword of Kagan, but it's also like, that's a kind of book that I would love to have sat down and worked on as one of my tests is like, I would love to be the agent of that book. I would love to sit down and help edit that book, and what's the future or whatever. But that's like in a box, which is kind of also fascinating. The thing that was her most popular project is actually I'm not allowed to touch, really, which is kind of fun in some ways, because we get to work on future stuff. With Dinniman, what's interesting is that he came to me from an entertainment lawyer. So in other words, an entertainment lawyer was like, I'm working with this guy. I don't even remember how he connected to his entertainment lawyer, a great guy named Matt Sugarman. But basically, like, there's a bonus to these things. You hire a lawyer likes your stuff, lawyer knows an agent. Like, that's not the route, but that's something that happened. And I then sort of dove all the way into the lit RPG space. I think that one thing you're going to note is that the writing on both of those books are legit. Mm-hmm. Are there issues? Sure. Are there things that those authors want to change? Sure. But I think it just still comes back to that's the key to it. These, and as I've read more and more in the progression of lit RPG space, I'm seeing similarities between a number of these big clients or whatever. I'm like, oh, whoa, who came first here? How influenced was this? It's stuff that I don't know the full like background on as I learn it. Like vampire books are vampire books, and you read the ones that are the best. Yeah. Right. And yeah,
I think there's actually a pretty good lesson there for people who want to still find success in any space. Because I feel like a lot of people try to learn right by doing, which I admittedly tried to do. But in hindsight, I was like, no, I should have gotten the technical prose side of things stronger. And it seems like the advice from the 2 examples you gave are get your books in as many people's hands as possible after you have spent the time to make sure the writing is legit. This is an art form. You need to get the writing solidified. You need to make sure that this isn't something that feels like it's, got a lot of work that should have been done before it started getting sent out, and that way you kind of have a cleaner entry to this process. Does that sound about right?
That's true. Now I'm going to recognize the Royal Road and whatnot. Like a lot, like people like put out their stuff, and there's been plenty of success from those things.
Mm-hmm.
And and sometimes an author needs to do that in order to write. And I get that, but you still have to progress you still have to progress yourself. Right?
In some ways, I feel like there's people are kind of treating their audience a bit like, or their audience at the time a bit like beta readers. It's kind of like a giant beta read community, which I think is great. Thank you so much for answering so many of my questions here and trying to distill an incredibly complex industry and your experience with it down to a little over an hour interview. And I just want to say I appreciate you, one, giving me a shot and being willing to talk with all of the goblins here as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I feel like I went in all these different tangents, and there's a lot of specificity we could focus on. And I also, like Daniel, I'm so excited about your writing and what you're up to. And I feel like we were remiss in not sharing some of that process together, so we can talk about that more. But I can't wait. Just letting everyone know I'm putting him through the ringer as well, so this is good.
I will happily bring you on anytime to talk about my book, my writing, your writing as well, but I feel like today was a good introduction to the Seth talk for just general industry and getting to know who you are in the industry, so I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll say like and subscribe, everyone. Check out Seth's beautiful books down below. And do you have social medias you want them following you on, or no?
Yeah, I mean, my middle name is Aaron and Shy, so it's Seth A.S. Fishman, Seth as Fishman, at
Gotcha.
all the different places.
Gotcha. I'll have them on screen. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.
All right, thanks, y'all.